Hey you, who are you texting?
What are you doing out shopping? I didn't say you could leave the house.
Do comments like these sit right with you?
I can't remember the last time I saw the girls. He gets so angry. It's better I just stay at home.
With 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men experiencing some form of domestic abuse, the message is out there. Domestic abuse doesn't always come in the form of physical violence.
Many couples will end up having an argument from time to time. There's a difference between that and one person who's persistently picking on the other one, that low-level bullying that sometimes leads up to the really serious levels of violence and, in the very worst cases, beyond that, to death. So we've got to challenge the attitudes around domestic abuse.
The yellow sofa, now the symbol of the campaign. Does an unusual or crude comment sit right with you?
How can a woman or a man, if they're being abused, be unsure if they are being in a domestic abuse situation?
Well, things like physical abuse, they're quite obvious. So if your partner's hitting you, we know that's not right. But some of the warning signs tend to happen quite early on in a relationship. So you might meet somebody who's texting you many times a day or ringing you, who you're with, what you're up to. And that can seem quite flattering to begin with. But often they're the early signs of domestic abuse and about a partner trying to control who you see, what you do, where you go. And things tend to spiral out of control a little bit from then.
Reporting abuse for some is not where the abuse necessarily ends. Often, one partner might be more reliant upon the other financially in the case of mortgages or rentals, or if children come into the equation. They're also putting the spotlight on domestic abuse to reduce the shame and taboo in speaking up about it and seeking help.
I think for a lot of victims, sometimes it's almost a cultural thing. It's about shame, and that's a real issue, getting people to say, no, this isn't about you doing the wrong thing, you're right to report. But sometimes, of course, it is recognition that people can be dependent on others.
For years, domestic abuse was always called domestic violence, and that in itself lent itself to people thinking it was very physical. There's a number of cases that spring to mind where you kind of see really horrible situations that you wouldn't really, from an outsider's perspective, think as abuse, or even if it's happening to yourself, you wouldn't really think of it as abuse. So one example that I could give you is a husband and wife where the husband would frequently tighten the taps in the kitchen and in the bathroom, which meant that it was really difficult to untighten them. What people might not realise was that his wife had arthritis, so it made it excruciatingly painful for her to undo the tap in the kitchen or the bathroom, which meant that she struggled to wash the pots, wash herself, bath herself. That kind of really small action that an outsider would never see. We think how mentally troubling that can be if somebody is controlling you to that really finite amount. It has a huge impact on that victim's life, and campaigns like this yellow sofa really start people questioning what those little things are, what those little things that are being controlled are, and actually helps them to recognise, it sends a really clear message out that is abuse and that it will not be tolerated in Greater Manchester.
Simon Anderson, that's Manchester.